Hello and welcome to our career interview with Mr. Patrick Murphy. Joining me today for this interview is student Ben Gourneau. We'll get started. Mr. Murphy, if you could tell us what your profession is and tell us about the journey that you took to where you currently are today.
That's a big question. I'm a NOAA Corps officer, so I'm an officer in the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Commissioned Officer Corps, which is a small service, a uniformed service of about 300 officers that operate NOAA's ships and airplanes. We're commissioned through the Department of Commerce, so we're considered active duty, but we're not considered military. And the way I got here was I went to school. I went to college for science. I majored in physics and was working on an astronomy graduate degree, and decided that I really liked the natural sciences and the earth sciences, and grew up near the ocean and worked at the beach, and thought, well, I'd like to study oceanography, and ended up going to graduate school for oceanography, for physical oceanography, which is the wind and the waves and the tides. And while there, I discovered that the NOAA Corps was an opportunity for a career, because I like the more hands-on aspect of oceanography, not the so much the research part of it as far as like the office-based work. I liked being out in the field. I liked taking the samples, the ships. That was the fun part of it to me, was just getting out there and doing the science. And so I applied for the job. It's pretty competitive. I applied in 2004 and was accepted, and then they send you to basic officer training class, which is called BOTC. And I went to BOTC at the Kings Point, which is the Merchant Mariner Academy, Kings Point, New York. But now they do it at the Coast Guard Academy up in New London, Connecticut. And it's about 15, 16 weeks, probably a little bit longer now, of indoctrination, learning, uniform, learning officer bearing, learning discipline, but also learning navigation and how to operate a ship. And then they send you to a ship for your first assignment as the junior officer, and you work your way up as you gain more and more competencies.
So currently today, what does a typical day look like for you, if there is such a thing as a typical day? I know it can look different at different times, but what does it look like maybe on a typical day?
Well, the ships, a Corps officer spends their career going back and forth between ship and shore assignments. So you typically do about 2 years on a ship assignment and then 3 years on a shore assignment. So a shore assignment will be somewhere within the organization, within NOAA, working for an office, and it can be as varied as being a staff scientist in a lab somewhere in the country, or you could be working more in the administrative side of the organization, working on funding and budgets and project planning and that sort of thing. Now that I'm on a ship, I'm on sea duty. It depends on whether the ship is in port or at sea. That's really the big dividing line. So when we're in port, there's a lot of logistics going on. We're getting ready for the next project. So that means we're bringing on scientists and we're bringing on their gear, setting it up. We could be destaging a previous project, taking the gear off, taking on fuel, taking on food, doing any repairs that have to happen. A lot of personnel coming and going, whether it's for taking leave or just bringing in certain disciplines that are based on what we need, if we need engineers or if we need more ship drivers. And so in-port days are pretty hectic, and then at sea is when the routine kind of starts. When we're at sea, I'm on a fisheries ship, so my mission is that we do fisheries research. So we have a bunch of stations usually that are predetermined before we go out for the project, and we go from station to station doing whatever needs to be done on there. So we stand, the bridge of the ship where the ship is operated is always manned. So you typically stand a 4-hour watch, and then you have 8 hours off, then you have 4 hours on, and 8 hours off, 4 hours on. So since I'm the ship driver, we spend 4 hours operating the ship from the bridge, whether that's going between stations, when we're on station operating and leading the scientific operations from the bridge as the the deck people or scientists take the samples, and then we have our collateral duties when we're out at sea too, because the administration stuff doesn't stop either. But it's more of a routine when you're out at sea. It's just kind of 4 hours on, 8 hours off, 4 hours on, 8 hours off.
What do you love most about your job?
Part of it, what I just described, every day is different, right? I change assignments every couple of years, so the job is never stagnant. Sometimes once you sort of plateau in a certain skill set and you get comfortable, they move you on to another assignment, and that just continually challenges you, and being uncomfortable promotes growth, and so that you're constantly growing. And the other thing is just being out on the ocean. It's really fun. See a lot of amazing things, just whether it's other, marine mammals or whales, or we catch a lot of fish. I've learned how to, never in my wildest dreams, I think I'd learned how to trawl a giant trawl net behind a ship. That was just not something that I envisioned. We work with a lot of cutting edge technology, some ROVs, the remotely operated vehicles, off the side of the ship that are just swimming around on the bottom, tethered to the ship, taking real-time video of the bottom, and they have a little arm and they can collect samples. And a lot of it is just the varied nature of the different projects that come on. I can read articles in the newspaper or magazines and say, oh yeah, I worked on that project, or I worked on a project similar to that, or so I had a hand in advancing science and conserving the resource for the country. We're the stewards of the resource, and that's really rewarding.
What kind of skills would you say are needed for this job? Any like soft skills, or like communication or problem solving?
I don't need to get that. Hold on, let me turn down my radio. We have radios that we talk to each other on the ship with. So all the skills are needed, especially as you advance up, and you're given more responsibilities on the ship. So when you first come to the ship, a lot of it is self-management. You're given tasks, and you have to figure out how to do them with limited direction and limited oversight. And then as you move up in the ship, so you start off usually as a navigation officer, and then you move up to the operations officer, where now you're interacting with the science party, organizing the comings and goings and the day-to-day operations. And then as you move up to the management aspect, now you're managing people, and you're managing change on the ship. You can say, well, all right, we're doing it one way, we need to slowly get everybody to do it the other way, and that takes a lot of people management, a lot of soft skills, a lot of talking to people, because although I'm uniformed, most of my crew isn't. Most of my crew are civilians, so it's not like the military where you're running around just giving orders or stuff like that. People have to trust you, and people have to know that they have your best interest at heart, or you have their best interest at heart. And we all have to trust each other, because we're on a ship out in the middle of the ocean. If something goes wrong, we have to rely on each other to fix it, whether that's fire, flooding, or medical emergency. And then there does need to be a technical aspect to understanding how the ship works, being able to interact with the scientists regardless of their discipline. You have to have a large enough science background that you can readily assimilate what they're telling you. And same with talking to the engineers on board, the people that make the ship work. They're specialists in every aspect of a ship. So you can think of everything that it takes to run your home, or like a small city, right? The plumbing, the electricity, the HVAC, all that sort of stuff. These guys can fix, but I got to be able. We have divers in the water.
Alongside the ship at this time. Do not operate any equipment over the side. Rotate screws, cycle rudders.
So we do this because we have divers under the ship, so they're
underwater electrical equipment, or open or close any valves without authorization from the dive master and the chief marine engineer.
So they're making an announcement to make sure that nobody turns on the ship, nobody rotates the prop, nobody turns on the transducers and sends out high-pitched sounds, things like that, for the safety of the divers. So it takes all those skills. When you're running the ship, you're kind of one of those typical, you're not a master of anything, but you have to understand everything.
Awesome. So you already answered my other question. So Ben, I'm going to say go to your next question.
Okay. What advice would you have for a student interested in going into your profession? Sorry.
Part of it was there's a couple of things. One is I feel like, and this is my opinion, don't give the earth sciences a don't short the earth sciences, right? I think typically when my path was, when I was in high school, as going to college, it was, you take biology, you take chemistry, you take physics, you take an AP senior year, chemistry, physics, something like that. And the earth sciences were always kind of pushed aside and not really treated as on the same tier to me as those foundational sciences. But I really liked them, and I asked to take earth science when I was a junior in high school, just because it interested me, and because when I was a senior I wanted to take oceanography, and that took some convincing of my counselor. I took that in addition to the regular physics and biology. So I feel like sometimes the earth sciences are looked down on because they're very interdisciplinary. You do need that strong foundation in biology and geology and chemistry and physics in order to do oceanography and meteorology and all those different types of earth sciences. But so I would say don't ignore the earth sciences just because some people tell you that the those key foundational sciences are the really important ones. But also take a chance. This is not a traditional career path. Some people feel very safe just staying on land or living in one place at the same all the time, and with a certain certainty. And this job is very unexpected. Every day is different, and it's a hard job. I've had some real big challenges in this job, but I've also had a lot of successes in this job. It challenges me every day. And also, before I got to this job, I was on a path to do astronomy, and I was also had an internship at Surface Science Lab, which is kind of like making computer chips, and a lot of that was finding out what I didn't like, finding out what seemed interesting, but then saying, maybe this isn't for me. So I found some people, it takes courage to say, no, this isn't for me. I want to do something else. And there's even people who have joined the NOAA Corps that said, this isn't for me, I want to do something else. And that takes courage, because sometimes it's just easier to go along with what you're doing and not, make any waves and just, stay the safe path. But I think people are more fulfilled when they go out and really chase what they want instead of doing what they think other people want.
Well, Mr. Murphy, those were our questions for you today. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up for students that will be watching this?
I can't really think of much. I think that going out into the field is the best part of science to me. And so if you can find anything, no matter what discipline you're in, if you're going to be a scientist, if you can find some excuse to get out of the office and collect the data, that's the most fun part of it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time. I think it's a great message too, the idea of challenging yourself and making students think that there's lots of different pathways and not to just stay on one pathway because that's what they maybe started on. So thank you for that message, and thanks for your time today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Take care, guys. Enjoy your day.